We'll do a review of Likutei Sichos in Chelik Yud Ches, volume 18, the first Sicha from the Parsha of Balak. This is a Rashi Sicha in which the Rebbe explains the detail in the Rashi, part of the prophecy of Bilam. And as the Rebbe explains that although Rashi is more involved in his commentary with the expounding part of Torah because of Misholah, yet we have to be able to explain why Rashi writes and the order of Rashi, the two different commentaries Rashi brings, as the Rebbe will explain in the Sikha. And the Rebbe will also bring out a very powerful lesson about how the Jewish people are especially privileged and the love and the special dearness that Hashem shows them, and other various different important parts in this Rashi and the lesson of this. We'll start inside. But first, the Rebbe is going to spend a few moments to explain that although in the Parshas, when it talks about Misholim, the fact that it is a prophecy and it's called a moshel by the words of Bilam, Vayisom Misholei, and therefore Rashi will tend to be more elaborate and bring down more medrash, but yet we need to be able to understand the reasoning behind Rashi bringing something first, second, and why Rashi explains the way he does. So, Aleph. So in Geret Amol Ba'arucha, we had already spoken at length. As Choch Rashi B'Pirushe Ala Torah is Mefarish Pshute Shel Mikra. Although Rashi, generally, in his commentary on the Torah, will explain the simple meaning of the verse. That's the generally accepted, but yet, Undorten, who are bringt in Zain Pirush, Droshes, Razal, and in those places where Rashi brings down in his commentary of the expounding of our sages of blessed memory, is though pipshat, and then there is in that case that we have to say that literally. So this would apply in most places in the Chumash. Rashi would only bring down a commentary of the expounding commentaries of Chazal, of Razal, if it's necessary according to the literal level of this pasuk. From deswegen, and yet, not that's a rule that we say generally, Zetmen, but we do find, we see, as in unser parsha b'shayches to divrei Bilam, that in our portion, as it connects to the words of Bilam, bringt Rashi arop aribu droshis razal. Rashi brings down a great many expounding of the sages of blessed memory. Klal shloi al derech harogil b'pirushay. Totally unusual for Rashi's commentary to do so, to bring down all these expounding statements of our sages of blessed memory. Why is that so? Why is our parsha different than the rest of the Pirush Rashi of the Torah, where Rashi limits his Pirush only to the Pshat and only brings down a drosha, an expounding view, to in a place where he has to, and over here he does it very loosely in the parsha of the Bilam. That's in them. So what the explanation is, Torah b'pshute shel mikra, because the Torah itself, even in the simple verse, literal sense of the pasuk, Zog b'feidish, says very clearly, Vayisom Misholei, that he raised his parable. So that means that this is a parable that Bilam uses, is muvan. So therefore it's understood as oich loit derech hapshat, that even in the style, the path of the literal, simple meaning, is that Pirush von Odi Psukim. So the interpretation of these verses need bagrenitz. It's not limited loit dam poshet und teich von the Werter according to the simple translation of these words. Nor esis do animsho. If there is a marshal, there is a parable, there has to be the lesson of the parable, the nimshal, what we learn from the parable. In ze gefinnen sich euch remozim und droshes. In them we find also hints, expounding, was eine nit mefurish in the Wörter vom Posuk, which are not clearly articulated in the words of the verse. So basically, this would mean that it is a more looser and a more inclusive commentary, not just the Pshat, because as Rashi would agree, because as we see in Rashi, because this is a mushal. But yet the Rebbe argues that still we have to give it it has to some degree, it does have to have reasoning and explanation why Rashi says what he says. Aber zusammen damit, together with the above, is moving, it's understood as euch didrashes, also these expounding interpretation, habuna hechrech in pshat hakosuf. They are forced out in the simple meaning of the verse. Ze habuna shayches und seine negeya zu avonos hakosuf. They have a connection, and they are connected. They touch the understanding of the pasuk. In order to understand the pasuk, we need the memory chazal, these drushes. So now that we come to this, based on this, that we still need the explanation, not just to bring down drushes. So we need to understand them. Zweiten dibur hamaschel the pirush Rashi from pasuk. The Rebbe is explaining now the second opening, the second commentary in Rashi on the verse in Divrei Bilam. The pasuk says there, "Ki loy nachash b'Yakov v'loy kesem b'Yisrael," that the Bilam was saying that amongst the Yidden, amongst Yaakov, we don't find nachash, we don't find kesem. Those are translated as fortune tellers telling the future, various forms. By the Yidden, we don't have these types of uses. As we'll see in the Rashi, Rashi says that Yidden rely on other. They don't use kesem. They don't use nachash in order to know the future. And the pasuk Eis Ya'amar li Yaakov li Yisrael ma poal kel. So what exactly does this words mean? That now it will be said to Yaakov and Yisrael what Hashem does. So let's see in the Rashi how Rashi interprets these words in the verse Eis Ya'amar li Yaakov li Yisrael ma poal kel. So Rashi is mighty the Werther. So Rashi quotes these words of the pasuk Eis Ya'amar li Yaakov v'gomer of this pasuk on his mefarish, and he explains. Oid osid liyes eis ka'eis hazois, that there is also in the future going to be a time just like this time. At that particular time, when the Eibishter was leading the Bnei Yisrael and gave them the Torah through Melech Boy, as we'll see, it was a great time. Hashem did not accept Bilam's curse. His ka'eis, just like this time, is going to be in the future. Asher tigola chiboson le'ein koil. Everybody will be able to see, their special dearness will be revealed for everyone to see, le'ein koil, to the eyes of everybody. Their chiba will be revealed for everybody. In what way? Everybody will be able to see, just like now, they're also in the future. Shem yeshvim lefanov, v'leimdim Torah mipiv, that the Yisrael, Yaakov and Yisrael, the Jewish people, will be sitting before Hashem, and leimdim Torah mipiv, and they will learn Torah from the mouth of Hashem. And umichitzosum lifnim imalach hashoros, and their partition, the place of where they are, will be inner, closer than the angels that serve Hashem. They will be sitting before Hashem in a closer area, in a closer mechitza, in a closer partition than the malachim that serve. Vehem, and they, the angels, when they want to know what Hashem said, Yishalu Lahem, they'll have to ask Yaakov and Yisrael, Ma po'al kel, what is Hashem doing? What did he accomplish? So they will come because the Yidden will see directly and they will take it from the Yidden. This is also what the verse states. Rashi continues that V'hoyu einecha royes es meirecha, and it will be that your eyes, you'll be next to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, your eyes will see your teacher, the Torah that Hashem is teaching. One interpretation. Davar achar, another interpretation. According to this interpretation, Ka'es, like now Ya'amar Yaakov will be said to Yaakov in the future. Another interpretation is Ya'amar Yaakov Einay Loshen Asik, that this is not a language of the future, that it will be said in the future. It will be said about them that they will be expressively a revealed way close to Hashem. But we're talking about now, El Loshen Heva, we're talking about present. Ka'es now, Ya'omar Li'Yakov, Einom Tzrichen Le'Menachesh, V'Koisim. They do not require these various sorcerer, not a Menachesh, not a Koisim. Ki b'chol eis shetzorich le'ha'omer Li'Yakov L'Yisrael. Ka'es Ya'omar Li'Yakov L'Yisrael. When any time that Hashem needs to say to Yaakov and Yisrael, Ma Paul, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, what Hashem accomplishes, what Hashem does, what is Hashem going to be doing? And what is this decree up in heaven? They don't use the menachshim and the koismim to relate to them what's going on. Either alpin niviyehem, by the mouth of their prophets, what is the decree of Hashem? Or the Urim V'Tumim tell them. The Unkelus Liturgim came. And Rashi adds that the Unkelus does not translate so. Like neither of these Pirushim. So the Rebbe asks, this whole Rashi over here seems to be a very, very lengthy Rashi with two interpretations. And we need to understand a lot of details in this whole Rashi. First of all, the Rebbe says, Aleph, the Arichas in Pirush Rashi, this great length in this Rashi commentary, in this commentary of Rashi, Befrat in Eshnet Pirush, specifically in his first commentary, where is those Alts Merumas? Where is all of this hinted? And was is das Negea zum Pshat? And why is it important to the meaning, simple meaning in the Werter from Pasuk, in the words of the Pasuk, this whole drasha that Rashi brings down about the Chibosom and the Chitzosom and the whole drasha, this seems to be a very lengthy. Why? Where does it say in the Pasuk all the details, and why do we need to know all the details? Base. Then we also need to understand whenever there is two commentaries, there is some problem with either one of them. So, was is the Schwerigkeit in jeden von die Pirushim? In each one of these commentaries, what are the difficulties that Rashi needs to come on to another interpretation? Was Rashi darf auch kommen zu beide Pirushim? That Rashi needs to come on and explain and give us both explanations. And number three, Gimel, Rashi is Magdim, dem ersten Pirush waren zweiten. The fact that Rashi brings down first, introduces first the first commentary, That comes first before the second one. That order of the way Rashi brings down commentaries represents what Rashi is more thinks that it's more fitting as the first shot. So was weiß as there is nenter zum shot. That points to the fact he brings it first that it's closer to the simple meaning. Mit was is der erste pirush nenter zum shuter shel mikro. What makes the first commentary closer to the Pashtavar? So we need to know why we need two, and then also to specifically understand why the first one is closer to the simple meaning. And number 4, was is Rashi oisen mit den Siyum? What does Rashi mean when he concludes Unkelus letirgum kein? Unkelus did not translate so. Seems to be a strange addition to the Rashi to tell you that Unkelus does not translate like Rashi. So if this was always Rashi, always met up with the Unkelus, and this is like a unique case, Rashi says Unkelus letirgum kein. But the reality is Rashi doesn't match up with the Unkelus in most places. Beribui, or most places, but in many places, is Targum Unkelus anders from Pirush Rashi. The translation of the Unkelus is different than Rashi. Or Rashi der Mont ni esnit, and Rashi does not mention it. She does not say on the other commentary, Unkelus didn't interpret. So why did Rashi have to bring down over here that this is not like the Unkelus? This is a standard thing that is not like the Unkelus. So now in those bays, the Rebbe bring down that some of the commentaries want to explain what is the reason for the first pshat, and also what's the reason for the second pshat, why Rashi needs to bring down both and the difficulties. And the Rebbe challenges and shows that this explanation doesn't really work. Meforshim zogon beis. Some of the commentaries say, as der hechrech of them ersten pirush is from them loshen ka'es, that what forces us to give the first commentary, for Rashi to present the first commentary, is the language in the posik ka'es. Ka'es means like now, which applies for the future. So the first commentary is talking about now for the future. The second commentary is talking about present. The first commentary talks about the future, and because of the word ka'es, it's mashma, like now, so will be the future. So that's the first commentary. Since it says Loshen Ka'es mitachov hadimyon, was from them nemt Rashi, that is where Rashi takes from. As oid osid liyos eis ka'es azois, that there is going to be in the future a time like this time, ka'es, like this time, there will be a time in the future, which means nit the itzike zeit mamash. We're not talking about now what's going on. We're talking about in the future. Bedoime zu der früher gesagte Zeit, and this will be similar to the above mentioned. Already we talked about the future. When the Pasuk says before, Utruas Melech Boy, which is prophecy of Bilam, it says, what is Virashi Taich? What is the meaning? Usruas Melech Boy, the friendship of the king will be in him. Loshen Chiba Vireus, that means a friendship and a dearness. Vet kumen noch azat zeit. Usruas Melech Boy Kois. Like now, when the dearness of the Yidden will be revealed for everybody, and he explains how. So it says Utruas Melech, but it will be the dearness, the friendship, the chiba of the king. So Rashi explains over here in our pasuk, when is that time going to come? And that's why he brings down the first shot, as that's what some commentaries say. Zweiten Pirush, kommen die Wörter, these words, according to the second commentary, what's the advantage that these words, Ka'es Yomer Li Yaakov, Behemshech Tzas Cholos HaKosov, they fit in as a continuation, as a flow to the beginning of the pasuk. These are one, not two separate parts. It's just one flow. The pasuk starts off Kiloi Nachash BiYaakov B'lei Kesem B'Yisrael. That there is no Nachash and Kesem amongst Israel. And the pasuk says that B'Shas Eden Darfen Epes Wissen, and when they do need to know something, Vertos Ibergegeben, then it is passed along through the Nevi'im or the Urim V'Tumim, through the prophets or the Urim V'Tumim, which the Kohen Gadol wears the Choshen Mishpah, the Urim V'Tumim, and that's how they know. So, because they don't have a Nachash and a Kesem, Ka'es Ya'amar Zomapal Kel through the Nevi'im Urim V'Tumim. So, now this is the reason for the Pshatim. We can see what's the difficulty in the first pshat and what's the difficulty in the second pshat. According to this interpretation of the Mefarshim, is loit in ersten pirush shver. According to the first commentary, it's difficult. Was der Teuchem von Ka'es Yomer v'Gomer hat nit ken hemshech zu as cholos hakosum. That Ka'es Yomer, the second part of the pasuk, we're talking about the Hashem will show the dearness of the future, has no flow, doesn't have a continuation from the beginning of the pasuk. Und euch in zweiten Pirush ist da Schwierigkeit, and also in the second commentary there is a difficulty. Number one, Allah bepashtus is ye omar loshen osin nit loshen hoiva. Simply, we say ye omer will be said, not being set up presently, is ye omar loshen osin nit loshen hoiva. It means the future, not the present. And according to the second shot, it means the present that they know by Urim V'Tumim. So that's one difficulty. And B is the Loshen Ko'eis Mitachov Adim. Say, like now, implies that like now, like the time now, it will be in the future. So that gives us a little bit of perspective why there is difficulties in the first one, the second one. But according to this, it still remains for us to understand. Aleph. Ein hachinami aslun posik is muchach asivet zayin noch a zeit bedoimet zu der zeit. Let it be true that from the verse it's evident. We have to say there will be another time which will be similar to our time. Okay? So in other words, we have to be talking about the future. Then at the future time, then it will be told to Yaakov what Hashem has done. But from Vanen, so we know that we're talking something about the future. But from Vanen is Ober Derayev, where do we, however, we have the evidence, the proof. Was is Negei, why is it important in Pashtus Pirush Aksuvim, in the simple explanation of the verses? They brought him the details. Shem Yeshim Lefonov, they said before Hashem, Velemdim Torah Mipiv, and they learned Torah from his mouth, from Hashem, Umichitzosum Lifnim Malache Hashoris, and that their partition, their area is inside, in front of the angels that serve. Und die Malochim, and who is gewollen sein, die was wollen fragen Mapal Kel, who is, what did God do? We're just talking, the future there will be Mapal Kel, but we don't know all these details. Where does all the details come in? And why do we need to know these details? And base, we still don't also understand for was is magdim dem ersten pirush, for dem zweiten. Why is he introducing the first commentary Rashi before he brings the second commentary? Adrab, on the contrary, the zweiter pirush, the second commentary, trotz dein Schwierigkeit in Loshgenal, notwithstanding the difficulty, because it's mashma the future, and second commentary says means the present. But it's still a better commentary. Is the This seems to be still closer to the simple meaning of the verse. Their meat was the zweiter tel pasuk, with the fact that the second part of the verse comes as a follow-up to the beginning of the verse. As opposed to, according to the first commentary, it's a totally different pasuk. Pasuk says one thing, then it talks something about the future, and how to flow. And we actually find so, as in Medrash, that in the Medrash state der zweiter Pirush von Rashi. Over there, the quotes the first, the second commentary that Rashi brings down, before the first one Rashi brings down. Meaning the order in the Medrash is reversed. And even more than this, the Ramban in Pasik, the Ramban on the verse, brings for Rashi Pirush. He only brings from Rashi the second commentary. So this all seems to imply to us and tell us that the second commentary should be the one that Rashi should bring down first, because it is more and simpler and fits better into the flow of the pasuk, which makes more sense, notwithstanding the difficulty of the Ka'es Yomar, which would imply for the future, but that should still be the first shot, because that flows and follows the beginning of the pasuk, as evidence from the Medrash and from the Ramban not even bringing the first pasuk, first interpretation. Gimel. Actually, the Rebbe says the third question that Rashi himself implies that it's not absolutely against the simple meaning that Yeomer and Ko'ez should mean the present, which would be further reason for Rashi to bring down that shot more, because if we look carefully in the Lashon Rashi, you will see that Rashi only says over here it means the future, but Rashi still allows and gives room for meaning the present as well, even though it says Yomer. Gimel, for Rashi's Lashon, Rashi's language. Another pshat, Rashi says, when it says Yomer LiYaakov, it's not a language of the future, but a language of present. Is muchach, that is evidence from this, as Yoimar, Yeomar can get touched, that Yoimar is, we are able to translate it also in the present. Because Rashi is saying it's not a Lashon Os, meaning that it could be Lashon Os. It could be, he's saying, that it could be a Lashon Os. Rashi Shem Frier is das Masbir. As Rashi already earlier explained it, that Bibald, das is Dovar Ha'ive Tomid. Since it's a constant, the whole is. So therefore, you can say Ye Omer is being said constantly. So it doesn't have to mean the future. It could mean the present. Un Oich, der Loshen, Ko'es, the other part, it says Ko'es means like now in the future. According to the second pshat, we can answer what does it mean? Ko'es, Meforshim Taichin, as Meforshim explained, as Ko'es meant when as kum the side was medafim is Ko'es, like this time, when there will be a time that you need to know, is nimsar lamap in it's given over through the prophets. So we're not talking about the future, sometimes down the road. We're talking about like now, whenever they need it, we're going to be revealed. So the Ko'es and the Yeomer are not really so difficult in the second shot, and yet Rashi brings it as a second shot and not as a first shot. How come? That is even in taking into consideration the advantages of the first shot, that it means literally the future, the advantages of the second shot, that it has a flow, would still seem that the second shot is better and closer to the simple meaning of the verse, and that should have seemingly come first. And now in Nois Gimel, the Rebbe is going to say that, well, the big problem is because on the first shot, what is our difficulty trying to understand the first shot is because it seems like it doesn't flow with the pasuk. The pasuk says will be lenachash v'lekesim, and then we're talking about dearness. What's the connection? But the Rebbe finds a Gemara in which the Gemara says there is a connection. Maybe we can sort of show that the Rebbe tries in Ois Gimel to show that maybe there is a connection in the beginning, even according to the first shot, Kilei Nachash, because the Gemara says as a reward for not being Nachash and Kesem, that's why they get to be Mechitzosei. Okay, let's look inside. But the Rebbe rejects that interpretation. Let's see Gimel. It would seem that we could have answered as der Hemshech zum Hascholos HaKosuf. That what would be the flow, the continuation to the beginning of the verse, according to the first commentary, is with the Gemara Zokt, is as the Gemara states, Kol Odom She'einu Menachesh, any person who doesn't do nichush, guessing, telling the future, Machnisin Oisoi B'mechitza, he gets brought into the partition, into the place Shafila Malach HaShoris Einon Ein Yecholim L'Konis B'Toicha, that even the angels that serve are not able to enter into it. Shenemar, because the pasuk says, Kiloi Nachash B'Yakov Lo Kesem B'Yisrael. There is Lo Nachash, and Yaakov Kesem B'Yisrael. In other words, they don't turn to the Nichush and the Kesem. So now they will merit the Yaakov they'll be the Mechitzos LaKadosh Baruch. This is maybe what Rashi is telling us over here. But the Rebbe says we can't say that this is Rashi's intention here. Because Aleph number one, in Rashi's Nitok, in Remez Afilu, Rashi doesn't even have a hint, even as dos was mechitzosam lifnim malach hashoris. That why are they inside of the partition, in front, ahead of the angels that serve? Is that's a result of lenachash, as the Gemara says, because lenachash. That's why they get this as a result. Number two, base lifizeh. If they're getting it as a result, because Lo Nachash and Lo Nachash is at present, so according to this, the benefit of Yom Mapal Keil, this should not have been only in the future to come. Oid Osid Liyis, as Rashi says, quoting Rashi, Eis Kois, as it is going to be still a time, like the pasuk says, Yomer. Since lenachash b'Yakov and lekesem b'Yisrael, we don't have them presently. Is b'Yakov kipirish Rashi. Rashi says now we don't have a nachash and a kesem. So also the result Yomer leYakov gedaft zayin needs to be in Zelben Zman at the same time. This is given b'shas Matan Torah, as it was at the time of Matan Torah. As Lomdu Aseres Adibris Mibi HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They learned the Seres Adibris from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not the future. It's already in the past to happen. So Why are we saying that this is going to take place in the future? Because they don't have the nachash. They learned because they did it by Matan Torah. And number three, Rashi says, what is important? And applies it. They learn Torah from Hashem's mouth. How does that connect to this whole thing over here? In Ois Dalet, the Rebbe is going to continue to further ask some detailed question in the languages that Rashi used in his commentary. Dalet. Also, we need to understand noch the yukim in Pirush Rashi. Some more diyukim questions that we can ask in Rashi Mahem, and that is amongst the questions. There's more, but the Rebbe is going to mention a few. 3. Aleph. In Ershton Pirush, in his first commentary, was his the Loshen. What is the meaning? Why is Rashi use the language Malach HaShoris? The angels that serve, nit Malochim Stam. There's some emphasis here about Malach HaShoris, base. And in the first commentary also, Rashi says, this is said, so Rashi is saying now the means what we're talking about over here, this idea. So why is Rashi explaining See, that is Rashi's is then Rashi's idea of Rashi and the commentary on the Torah to explain verses in the Yim Ksuvim. And number 3, in Sveiten Pirush, in the second commentary is Rashi Moisef, which is the words of the pasuk. What does Hashem do? He adds the words what are his decrees up in the heavens? What is that connection to here? Nochmer. In the Hemshech der Monter Nor, when Rashi comes in the continuation, he just mentioned Nimsalahem Alpinivieh Mike Zeresamoke. He just mentioned what is the Xeris, Unit Mapol Kale. And he doesn't use the lashon of the pasuk over here. So what's this Rashi? What does this all mean? In Ois Hey, the Rebbe brings out the beginning of the answer that the pasuk over here is explaining as a bilam to Balak why he is not able to curse the Bnei Yisrael. And he goes through the various different stages until he comes to the place that the Jews actually deserve bracha. And the reason they deserve bracha, not curses, is because they don't have nachash v'kesem. And as a follow-up to that, he has to say, but I am a nachash and a kesem. And that's kesem ksamim. That's what bilam is. So to say, that's why he's saying, ka'es yomer leYaakov, that it's not because of his fault. That's the Yidden are special. So that's the Hemshech HaDvarim, as the Rebbe articulated later on. Hey, der Biur Bazeh. So what's the explanation of this? Balak had gedungen Bilamen. Balak hired Bilam. Go, please, and curse me, this people. Beshayches der Vit is given der Entfer. And as a connection to that, the answer was Vayisam Mishaloi. So he raises his marshal. Bilam says to Mershtumal the first time, why he's not able to do what Balak wants him to curse them. Mo Ekov, Goimer, I can't curse. Hashem doesn't curse. Kimirosh, Surim Arenu, Goimer, I see them from where they come, from their origination, strong like these great boulders. And talking about the Oisir Gevein Lechamailas from Eden, the distinguished advantages, the greatness, this totally beautiful advantages of Yidden. As Rashi details them in his commentary on these verses. Similarly to this in the second time, when he wanted him to curse again, Bilam raises his mashal, his parable, hyped on. So he begins with the word leish kel v'chaziv, that Hashem is not like a human. He does not falsify. He doesn't say the false as men kenit durchführen Balak's willen lamisim b'midbar. Cannot accomplish Balak's wishes to kill them in the desert. Und is mamshich weiter in the miles from Eden, and he continues further the advantages of the Yidden, the Chibosim, and their dearness as their Eibishter, farcooked the Avedas, that Hashem overlooks the sins from Yidden, of the Yidden. And on the contrary, true as Melech Boy, the true of the Melech meaning, Hashem's friendship, Hashem's love, dearness is with them. Like them is that the Nachmaisiv, and on this he adds, as nit nor is nit shaykh orally asom, not only that it was not applied to be able to curse the people, nor punkt laheper, but just the opposite. Ki loy nachash b'Yaakov, because loy nachash b'Yaakov ki ru'uyim heim lebracha, they are fit for blessing. Mitzad ma'losom she'ein b'hem nachashim b'koizim, because their greatness, their advantage, that they don't have an achmishim v'koismim. That's why they're fit for a blessing. But this concept that they don't have these future tellers of the teller of the future, the koismim nachshim, bringt bracha, and this brings blessing. Weißt der bechisus from Bilaman. This shows on the lacking and the lowness of Bilam. Bilam is a koisem, a fortune teller. The Riber had Bilam weiter mamshich, and therefore Bilam continued further wegen der Meile von Eden, about the greatness of the Eden, und der Mid madgish given, and this with this he emphasized as the Sibbe was kenit orally as a the reason why he can't curse the people is nicht mitzad zayin Bilam's son. It's not because of Bilam's lacking his deficiencies, Bilam's being on a lower level, nor mitzad der Meile von Yid. That's because of the adventure of Yid. Was hot Maram is given in Misholei, which he hinted in his parable, with his words, Ka'es Yamar li Yaakov uli Yisrael mapol keil. By using the words Ka'es Yamar li Yaakov so mapol keil, he gives out the reasoning that it's not his fault, that it's not his pchises, but rather is the Maile of the Yidden, as the Rebbe will continue to explain. In Ois Vav, the Rebbe will explain that when does the Ka'es apply to? It's speaking of the time of Matan Torah. That special time Ka'es, and we're trying to say the Maila of Yidden like Ka'es, like in the Zman of Matan Torah, and how the Yidden are even in a greater madrege than the Malach HaShoris, which was the idea of Limud HaTorah. That was the special time. And that's how Rashi gets to this whole idea of that the Yidden were lifnim and mechitza and listening to Hashem directly. Let's look inside. Vav. The beer in them, the explanation is Ko'es mit a chof kamutza, Ko'es with the chof that has a comments underneath. Weist of a bewusster Zeit. It points to a known time, like the time, a known time. About the Retzach wegen Chibas Yisrael, and since we're discussing here the dearness of the Jewish people, is moving. It's understood as Retzach wegen a Zeit, that we're talking about such a time when we saw the dearness of Hashem to the Jewish people. Ko'es, like the dearness that took place in this known time, will be in the future. This is also known to a 5-year-old who's learning Chumash as the Zeit, at the time when the Chibur von Eberstein zu Eden, in which the dearness of Hashem to the Jewish people is given Nikr Begoli, was openly recognizable, is given his Matan Torah. That was during the time that the Torah was given. About which it's written, Hashem says with regards to the preparation of Matan Torah, you'll be a zgula. You'll be a treasured from all the nations because the whole world belongs to me. As Rashi explains, what does this mean? V'Rashi v'Taishtis. Oitzer chaviv, you'll be a dear treasure. The Jewish people will be a dear treasure. So you will be to me chosen and treasured from amongst all the nations. So don't say, oh, there's only the Jewish people, there's no other people there, so Hashem chooses them. No. So what else do I have so that love will be, the special connection and dearness will be recognizable? Because at times I have the whole world. And they are in my eyes and before me like nothing. So you are special because there is plenty of others. But everything is mine, and then Hashem chooses us as his treasure. From the fact that we say, that we say, like now, like this time of Matan Torah, this will be said to Yaakov, as der Eis del Osid, but sein gleich zu der Eisa Yidua, that the future time will be equal, will be similar to the known time. There's Matan Torah, which is the time of Matan Torah, is move on. It's understood. As Punkt, wie bei Matan Torah mitten gelernt. Torah, von dem Ebersten allein, just like by Matan Torah, the Yidden studied the Torah, heard from Hashem alone, which is the Aseres HaDibros, was not gehört from Ebersten. Those are the 10 sayings which we heard from Hashem. So therefore, we're saying just like the time when we studied Torah and we heard the 10 sayings then from Hashem himself, so that's the way similar it's going to be the future. So now we see how we're building to get to this whole Rashi's comment about the study of Torah. As we learn Torah from the Ebersten, that we will learn Torah from the mouth of Hashem. How could you see that one is special? Is when you compare and you see that you choose one over the other. So Goyim have no connection to Torah. So the fact that Hashem chooses the Yidden doesn't show that they're dear to him. It's the fact that they are dear even next to the Malach HaShoretz, the highest level of the Malachim, not Jews, those that are some occasionally sent by their servant. How does openly the special dearness drückt sich aus im Vergleich zu anderen, that can be expressed when you try to compare it to others. Was lagabe zei is chibosem nikeres, relative to other, you can tell that the level of the love, the dear, how the Yidden are dear to Hashem is recognizable. Kenal bepirush Rashi, as earlier mentioned in Rashi. Rashi said v'yisem lizgula, next to others. But over there, it's talking about umas oila. So b'meila is move on, but in our case, it can't be umas oila. Because it's understood as B'shas says Torah. When we're discussing the study of Torah, the nation of the world at all don't have any connection to Torah. So are you going to tell the specialty of Yidden? Muslims sagen, as in them, that in this aspect, when we talk about Torah, is there Gilu Achiba, how do we see the dearness of Hashem in Vergleich legabe Malach HaShoros. We have to compare them to the angels that serve Hashem. Which means we're trying to compare it to even those who serve Hashem. The Yidden are distinguished in their level, how much Hashem holds them dear. I feel like the Malachim was is l'shoros kaviyachol. Even those angels whose main function is to serve, so to speak, the Meibishter, kaviyachol the Meibishter to serve Hashem. Because there is another level of Malachim which are just there as agents, but they're not there as servants of Hashem. But even relative to those who serve Hashem, not only with the Malachim shteim and Amatzav, not as they're standing in a situation as if from the Meibishter, in which they are accomplishing a message from Hashem, Lamata below. We learned about earlier about the angels and Gekumen Tzavram. They came to Avram to accomplish messages. One was to give the news to Sarah. One was to turn over his doim. And one was to heal Avram. One malach cannot do two shlichas. So you had separate malachim. So you have this limitation. They do a shlichas. They do this is one level of malachim. Al derech another. We find another example. Bahagar when it came to Hagar. But here we're talking about malachim nor v'zezainen mishors lemailo. They're mishors lemailo. They serve above. Kaviyachol the Meibishter. So to speak, Hashem. This means as euch legabe dem with the malachim zainen mishores, even relative to this, as the angels serve, but zayniker the chiba from Eden, we still can tell the special dearness of the Eden, because learning the Torah mipi from Meibishter, they will learn directly from the mouth of Hashem. The Haim and they, the Malach HaShoros, the Malach that serve. They're going to ask them what Hashem has accomplished, is done. So based on this, we understand as a follow-up to the fact that they are worthy for bracha. Because he's saying in the pasuk, so what's the flow? What's the hemshech? So there is no nachash b'Yaakov. So Bilam added, and he cautioned, trying to explain that they're worthy for a bracha l'nachar Yaakov. As those was mekennit shel zayin haklolo of the Eden, the reason why they cannot dominate, cannot have a curse rest over the Jews is nit by is apochos, not because he is lacking, he has a deficiency, he's less. He is a menachash v'koisim, and they are loy nachash. No, nor mitzad them etzem ma'ila von Eden. But that is because of the essence of the advantage of Eden. But says because it will be revealed their special dearness as mechitzosam lifnim malach hashoros. That they are partition is higher than the malach hashoros, closer to malach hashoros. So with nothing to do with him being a nechesh. They have a special ma'ila, so therefore, like Nachash, like Kesem, like Yaakov, and therefore they have a special greatness, and that greatness will not allow for him to curse them. And it's not because he is because Lenachav Yaakov, but he is a Nachash v'Koisem because he doesn't have that chibosam. This is a special ma'ila by Yid. But the issue remains still. The Rebbe explains in Zion, that was the hearing, that special dearness they heard directly from Hashem, and that's going to be ko'es in the future as well. That was only temporary because the Yidden himself didn't last. And Rashi brings down, therefore, the next pasuk, to tell you that this is going to be a permanent thing. That dearness from that pasuk. Zion. Over the Shaila. The Shaila, however, becomes number one aleph. We find by Matan Torah, by Matan Torah, as Yidnum gesagt zu Moshe, the Yidden said to Moshe, Daber ata imonu v'nishma, but Yidaber imonu elikim. Penomus. They asked, you speak with us, let us hear. Let Hakim not speak to us because we might die, lest we die. So they didn't want it. They said they were going to die. So it's not a special. If they hear from Hashem, they would die. It's not only that they said it, they had to stand, they stood in the distance. How is it going to be like now? They're going to hear Torah. They couldn't even do the Matan Torah. And even if so, as is Vedzain Nochamol, and as with Matan Torah, there's going to be another time. As with Matan Torah, is Farvosis as Shoyla them orally, Merve the Eis Matan Torah. So why would that preclude? How would that negate the orally that he's trying to do more than the Matan Torah? That dearness of Matan Torah did not accomplish that. So why is the fact that Ka'es, that special dearness is going to come later on? How is that going to protect? The Rebbe brings Rashi. That's why Rashi brings Aleph. Zehu shenemar, this is what the pasuk says. V'hoyu einecha roy ois es meirecha. They will see the teacher. As is mefurish, nemar in pasuk, it's nemar. It says beferish in the pasuk as the Eibishter wird sein moirecha von Yidden, the Yidden teacher. So it'll be by Hashem. Unin aneifim v'hoyu einecha rois. So they will see, and Hashem will teach them. So that means that Hashem will teach them, and it's going to be they are going to see by themselves, not through shluchim, not through. And Beis Shem Yeshum Lefonov, they will sit before him. Sit meaning there will be a constant. Does that need sein an ein molik ezach und man kotzer? It's not going to be a one-time thing for a short time. But in an eifim from Yeshua B'Kriyas, they're going to sit there in a permanence. That when it says Teisha, when they asked by Rivka should sit with them, Teisha Vitona Anaira, Rashi says that Teisha means that Lashon HaKova means delay, that she should stay there. So therefore, that means that this Oyu Einecha Roya says Merecha will be a permanent Yoshvim. They will be sitting there and learning from HaKadosh Baruch Hu by himself. Ois Ches. Es wird aber die Scheile, die bald as Soif. Is das an Inyan, was wird sein La'osid? Sit at the end of the day, it's like a special dearness for the Yidden. The Yidden had it before. It didn't really last. In the future, it's going to last. It's going to be permanent. But it's not now. It's in the future. Is v'azoi tutas oif. How could this accomplish? As to them soll it's nit kennen sein orally. That because of that, now he can't do what Balak wants him to curse them. The Rebbe brings Rashi, that's why Rashi brings Dover Achar, another pshat. Which means this pshat doesn't explain fully how is this going to help now because of their special dearness in the future. So Rashi brings Dover Achar. What's late them is, according to this other interpretation, it's not a language of the future, but it's present. Whenever there is a time that to Yaakov and Yisrael need to be told what Hashem is doing, it's not that they need to come onto the sorcerers, but it's given over through their prophets. So this is something present. Not only something which is going to be in the future. And therefore, that is something significant, which is a Maila of the Yidden, immediately that they get all this information from the Nevi'im and the Betumim, that makes them in a situation that he can't orally, and he's not pachos from them. However, is kosher. However, according to the second commentary, it's difficult. Was ka'es yoymar liYaakov Yisrael goymer is nit moisif of them was remain lebracha. But you don't have any addition, something new that Bilam was trying to justify himself why he can't accomplish that because le nachash le kaisem but by Israel. So he's not coming up with a new thing that they ruin livracha. If them was remain livracha, if them was Bilam kenit orally, that why are they more fit for a bracha and can do orally? It already says kilam nachash b'Yaakov. So what is the Ka'is Yomer doing more? At his blois, they're seeing b'hamshech haninyan. It's just the closing and the following of this topic from Tchilas HaKosov, from the beginning of the pasuk. Why? As those was idar from Beisen Zel the Nevi'im. This is that they knew. They know through the prophets. But there's no additional something to give explanation why Bilam isn't worse and why they deserve a blessing. Is move on. Was Rashi nimmt on the ersten Pirush als Pirush hoikri b'pshut mikra. Based on this, we understand why Rashi learns that the first one is the main pshat in the simple learning of the pasuk. Does the retzach wegen divrei Bilam. Since we're talking about the words of Bilam, in welchen hat gebencht Eden, und gerät wegen seiner Meile, about which he blessed the Eden, and talk about their greatness, is move on as their pirush in seine Rei, that when we comment, explaining his word, was brengt arois mer the Meile von Eden, which brings out more the advance of Eden, is an enter to pshat of psukim. That's closer to the meaning of the psukim, because according to the first pshat, we're saying something more special, which is a reason why they deserve the blessing and why he can't curse them. So that's why it makes more sense in Pshutush Mikra, the first interpretation. In Ois Tes, the Rebbe is mechadish that even according to the second pshat, Rashi adds the words. The Rebbe challenged before, why is that Rashi adding that? Rashi adds the words because Rashi wants to show that even the Yidden, there's a Maila in that second Ka'is Yomer LeYaakov, the fact that they know through Urim V'Tumim, there's through the Nevi'im, there is an additional advantage, because that way, if they know the Gzeira, they can do Teshuvah and they can nullify the Gzeira. So there is another advantage of Yidden. Let's look inside. Test. As is over Mistaber zu sagen, but it's logical to say, as euch Leut in zweiten Pirush, that also, according to the second interpretation, is the Hemshach von Divrei Bilam Moisif Freer. The continuation, the words of Bilam would add on before. In the Hasbore, the explanation, Pavos can sein orally, why there cannot be curse from it. That this adds to that also. Bilam had gewusst as der Eberster will estate. Bilam knew that Hashem doesn't want to curse the Yidden. What did he think? However, he thought, as that he can identify, he can be precisely the time, at that point, the hour that a God gets angry, and then he'll be able to curse them. Accomplish orally that Balak asked him to. The Rebbe is Rashi Ma'ising in second Pirush. That's why Rashi asked in second Pirush, that the Nevi'im tell him also what the Gzeir is in the heavens. It's been given over to them by their prophets. What is the decree of a Mokim? As euch Leut in zweiten Pirush, that also according to the second meaning, seine Diverter Ka'is Yomer LeYaakov Yisrael Gomer, These words, Haisofa, they're an addition in Shlilas HaKlola de Bilam, by taking away, negating the curse through Bilam. Even not just saying that they have the Nevi'im, they don't have the Nochash and Koisem, but to say that there is the Gezeres they know. The Baal, the Azafile in their Shah, was Koyesba. That even at the time when Hashem is angry, and like he was looking for it, Bilam, to find that hour, based on the they didn't know about it through their prophets or Vitumim, they removed that decree through Teshuvah. So here we have also an advantage right now. That right now there is a advantage between that they Yidden have the ability to negate even that opportunity that Bilam was looking for. Koyas didn't have an opportunity to take that away. So it turns out that we're talking about two greatness of the Yidden, whether that greatness which is going to come in the future when the Yidden will be a mechitza, a chibo, and makes them special in that way, or something small which is present, so which brings us to the question in general, what is more value, something small immediately or something large in the future? And that perhaps is the two interpretation of the pasuk, and the Rebbe wants to learn this with regards to other areas, and the Rebbe says there is no proof from here. Yud. Based on this, we can say, as the chilik between the zwei perushim, that the difference between these two commentary is a shakle v'taria in a shaila v'klolis. This is a give and take in a general question, and also which would affect the laws of the Torah. Vos is goiver. What is overpowered? What is stronger? A greater advantage that's going to be in the future, or a smaller greatness advantage, but is present. According to the first interpretation, it turns out that now it will be said for Yaakov Yisrael meant as that they are fit for blessing. And since Ruyin Hein Livrocha, as Rashi writes it, because of their dearness, there is not any place at all for curse to libzer grace maila because of the great advantage. Their specialty will be revealed to everyone to see. And that their partition, their place is inside of the one of the Malach HaShor, the angel at Zur. This is an advantage which is in the future. On the other hand, according to the second Pirush, it's on the contrary. It's not such a great advantage, which means Hashem could get angry. There is room, Hashem gets angry. It's applicable, there could be curse. Since it's been given over to them through their prophets, what is the decree of Hashem? So they protect that this should be nullified, not to be come through in actuality, shouldn't affect in pragmatically. But on the other hand, even though it's not such a strong mila that it shouldn't have a klola, there is, but this is something which is presently, it's behavior. So according to this, it turns out that it would seem, as them say that Pirushim in Rashi, that from the order, the way Rashi places these Pirushim, we can decide Rashi's view based on the Pshat as a that a greater advantage in the future is Machriya, the Klemera Maila Vosido would override the smaller Maila, which is presently, and the greater advantage in the future will override that which is presently a small. But Behemes came from the Pirish Rashi as the truth is, from Rashi we can't really learn this. While Aleph, Rashi is doch dos mefarish in Divrei Bilam. Rashi explains here the words of Bilam. Anofi ba'umas olam al derech vini vi Yisrael. This is similar when we talk about Anofi ba'yid. Is dos vos nimser lahem al pini v'yehem. This that they give over through the prophets. It's not so great as that they learn directly from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So the idea that the Yidden hear from Hashem alone, that level is much greater than the prophets, because that is already a second step, a second tier to hear from the prophet. So of course the first one is a greater level in this case. And number two, according to the first Pirush, is das nicht nur a Meile, was it sein Osid. It's not only an advantage of the future, but also presently there is that advantage as well. The Osid wird nur zukommen, that then it will be revealed to everybody. It's now there is two. That doesn't mean it's not. We can't tell it now. The Osid, that die Chiba und Meile von Eden is gale werden. In the future, this dearness and the advantage of Yidden will be revealed for everybody. And therefore, it's for them to an inyan. So then it doesn't prove. When we talk about a matter was the over there, the advantage will take place later. What we're trying to prove from this. In this case, the mile is now, but you can't tell about it. You don't know about it until later. But one who can't prove that something which the advantage will take place later, that also that will override the hoiva, that's not evidence for that. And therefore, we can't prove that. In Oishud Aleph, the Rebbe will explain why Rashi brings down over here the Unkelus Leitirgim came. And the Rebbe says that we see in the whole prophecy, the Mesholoi, we're all talking about the advantage of the Yidden. So therefore Rashi changes his usual way and says, I'm going to explain this all in the Chiboson, and especially the greatness of the Yidden. Notwithstanding the fact that Unkelus Latirgum came, the Unkelus doesn't want to translate that way. He wants to translate it Vipshute. But Rashi basically saying, I'm continuing to do it like the Mashal, like in a expression, the Malosin Shal Yisrael, Yudalef. Apikol Hanal, Zetman, as the Teuchene Ikri in alle Bilums read is the Oyser gewöhnliche Meiles von Eden. What is the main content in all of Bilam's words is the unusual greatness of the Eden. Was is given he was forced to emphasize this many, many times. In order to excuse himself from the Tvias from Balak. Balak was demanding many, many times, curse them for me, all kinds of demands from Bilam. Was their father is a peep shutish of Mikra. And therefore, according to the simple shot of the Mikra, also in the expounding way, in the hint way of Torah, Misholoi, Vayiso Misholoi, Pirush Aksuvim, how do we tie the Pesukim? As a Retzich b'malos Mishal Yisrael. We're talking here about the greatness of Eden. Und der Farbe warnt Rashi wundert sich. That's where Rashi answers, cautious us, and he is sort of exclamation, wondering. V'kama in the Aleph Pesukim v'Parshas Seinu is Kitargumai. That in many places is like the Targum, V'chein Tirgemunkelus. Oder akoponim mit noch apirish. So Inkelus and akopom noch apirish. Mit dem Eisnam in dem Posik. But this is an exception. When the Tmiya has Unkelus the Tirgem came. Need debate the Perushim. That he doesn't translate like neither of the Perushim. Unkleibta is dafke pshutish mikra mamish, and he's not discussing it in a way of a mashal, but he says the literal. Alpha P as Rashi out anders. Rashi holds different. Valer is misholoi now. It's a misholoi. It's a mashal. Unal psuk mered malos shel Yisrael. So Rashi still says, but you know what? There's still an unklus tirgum. In God's shows on Pirush will Rashi. Rashi does not want to reject totally the unklus, the simple meaning. Ubahasbore, and the explanation as unkelus was darkei. Rashi says unkelus loy tirgum kein, as if to say unkelus, whose usual way is pshut shamikra, he always says the simple meaning of the pasuk. I feel about Rashi zokte na mikra zoyim da shenik yotzba. Even in a situation where Rashi says this person tells us to expound, and still the unkelus says the pshut. So Rashi is sort of saying unkelus, who follows the literal loy tirgum kein. According to his view, which is also Rashi's view in the other psukim of the Torah, this is Rashi saying an exception. Yud Beis. One of the lessons that we can learn from the above. Notice that not only is the revelation that the Nevi'im tell us a continuous act. Presently, the Nevi'im are always there. And there's also, in every time, there is very clear instructions. Nevi'im, or the tzaddikim, the leaders of the generation, was Gilad Dvorav Aidei Avodov. The Eibishter reveals his words through his servants. Rosh Alpha Yisrael, the heads of the thousands of Yidden, the eyes of the community in every generation, in any generation. But also, the fact that Yidden study Torah from the mouth of Hashem is given need blois ein mol mamat Torah. That wasn't only once during the time when Hashem gave the Torah in Midbar in the desert. This is so in every time. As when a Jew studies Torah properly, Vert, as the verse says, Tam lishoni imrosecha. My tongue speaks your sayings. He is learning it from Hashem's mouth. As he's nervous, yes, he does behelim. Now it's hidden. That special dearness, which is apparently right, which is actually right now, will be revealed in the future for everybody to see. But Meile is verstandig, and therefore it's understood. As is nitov as zu nispoil zu werden, we should not be impacted from the maligim, from those who make fun of limud ha'Torah v'kiyum mitzvahs, and those who study Torah and observe mitzvahs. Ubefrat in afotzes ha'Torah v'yadus, especially those who spread out Torah and Yiddishkeit. Ibal der hot klore heroes, since you have very clear instructions from them was gilud v'rov de avodah, from the person who Hashem revealed through his servant. They're the servants of Hashem. Hashem reveals his words through his servants, Nochmer, and more. Not only through his servants, but from Hashem himself. And it's obvious that he finds himself together with Hashem. Hashem reads and learns opposite him. To the extent we say that we learn Torah today the way by Matan Torah. Just like them, when we received the Torah, it was with awe, with fear, with shiver, with sweat. Afkan, now when we learn Torah, we have to have the same thing, which means because it's another experience of Matan Torah. Afkan Azay, here too it has to be so. Since he is with wholesomeness, with innocence, and with Im Hashem Elokecha, zusammen mit Nebishtim, is the Tov as soon as spoiled to them, so we don't need to, there is no reason to become impacted. So even if the Goyim are making a lot of noise, and the nations are plotting, while their vase, as is Rik, he knows, it's garnished, it's empty, nothing's gonna. Even that which comes from a king or from an officer, the Balak Melech Moav as Balak, the king of Moav, or from any of the Nevi'ah or from one of the prophets of the nations of the world, because they also know, and their mazel sees it, Zetas. The Mailan, the flow from Eden, the great advantage of Yidden as mechitzosum lefnim afilu malach hasharis. But their partition is inside even of the angels that serve. It says, all the nations of the world have to admit, as Eden sein and Ruim hang the bracha, that Yidden deserving the bracha. They don't have the sorcerers, the menachshim, the kois, the seis. They do not consider at all, they don't count at all the laws, the customs of the Goyim. Eden stehen stark in their emunah in Torah. Eden stay strong in their belief in Torah. And then when we have that conviction, instead of the Sturvian bench, they bless, they help Eden, and they help Eden as a gornit felon, that they should be lacking nothing. Befrat, the contrary, especially in their Rizgim Bekor of Mamish, from Midbar Hagolus, so they can exit the desert of Golul and eingehen in the Gula Amitis and to enter into the true redemption in Eretz HaKodesh, in the Holy Land, Hepech Kavonas Balak, the opposite what Balak wanted to do to cause them not to go into Eretz Yisrael. Makumt, and we come to that the Golach Chibosum Lein Koil, that the dearness will be revealed to everybody, for everyone to see. So the king will be raising you, and their Soresayim, there will be those nursing you, the women of the Melachim. Strangers will stand up and they will feed your sheep in the Gula Mitzvah Shlem Mamash, in the true and complete redemption very soon. This is Mesichas Shabbos Pashas Balak Tovshin Lamed Zayin.